One, just getting settled here. It's Renee Jane. I think I'm live. Let's just double check. Yes. So I wanted to pop on here. Hi everyone. And chat with you about something that's really been a really important topic that I've been sharing with clients for many years, and that I also have structured as really one of the backbones of the group coaching program that I created for clients. And it continues to be a really important conversation, but I also find that I haven't really spoken about it too much live and in this group, and I really want to create more of a conversation around it. So that's why I'm chatting about this. And this is really rooted in what's called attachment styles. And you may or may not know what that is. So I thought I'd just take a second and share what the attachment style idea is. It's not really an idea, it's a literal thing. And it comes from the way we either attach or don't attach to our parents in our childhood, and how that ends up being a really big factor for how we show up with our health and with our life and relationships specifically. And so I want to talk about what those are, and I'll be kind of brief. This is a pretty big topic, but then I want to talk about how it specifically shows up for people when they're looking to make change with their health and their relationships. Because what I have been finding time and time again, so I've talked to so many people who have such big desires. Maybe they want to start a business. Maybe they have some burning passion that they've always wanted to create, but there's something holding them back from doing it. Perhaps it's a health-related thing. They feel like they've been on the diet roller coaster for a really long time, but they're not finding success. Nothing that they do is helping them break through it. If they are finding themselves in unhealthy relationship after unhealthy relationship, or maybe somebody who's just not been in a relationship for a long time, or if they are, they're emotionally shut off and just kind of like given up that they ever find the connection or the happiness or whatever that sense of self might be. So these are some of the things, and it breaks my heart, frankly, because, I'll just share personally. So I have been, I think it's been almost 12 years, between 11 and 12 years, that I have had the opportunity to be of service in this business around this idea of loving yourself, love yourself naked, and around holistic wellness and emotional health and mental health and spiritual health. It's like the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. And the physical has always been the first aspect of that, this physical body, beautiful physical body that we all have. And what most of us don't realize is that we store so much emotional stuff in the cells of our physical body. And I was just sharing today another Facebook Live in a group. Many of you may or may not know, but I do emotional mastery coaching for some corporations and things like that also. So I was doing a Facebook Live for them and talking about a very similar topic. And one of the conversations that the other person and I were sharing about was how I remember going to one of my first therapist appointments, and them asking me, after me spilling the beans about everything going on in my life, they said, like, how does that feel in your body? And I looked at them like, huh? In my body? I don't know. Let me just keep talking about everything I want to get out, right? Most of us want to be heard and we want to be seen, but we do not want to figure out what's going on in our body, because it's an instinct for many of us to intellectualize. So we might know about attachment wounds. Maybe you know about these already. You might have some kind of knowledge on what some of your blocks are. You might have a very deep intellectual knowing on some of it. But there's a really big difference in moving to embodying all of that intellectual knowledge and doing the work on core traumas in our body. So what I want to do today is share with you some of these things, because I have been finding, as I speak more and more with people, I'm doing a lot of calls these days, beautiful opportunities over Zoom. But I can see so many people who don't realize that the reason they're shutting down, or the reason they're not moving forward, or the reason they're stuck in fear of making change or making big decisions, whatever it is, has so much more to do with their attachment wounds than it has to do with anything. And the reason why I help the clients that I help, this isn't like a sales pitch of I'm just sharing with you, is helping them with emotional mastery and physical body nutrition, along with mindset and some spirituality, is because I don't believe you can do it any other way. It's not possible to, for the long term, keep changing mindset without doing trauma work, because all that trauma and the issues that are caused from unhealed attachment wounds are going to come up and they're going to bite you in the butt. And you're going to realize it when things start crumbling or things don't move forward. You're going to see it when you realize there's health issues that are cropping up and you can't figure out a solution. So it's very important that it's holistic, right? That we are looking at our healing journey and our practice from all these different ways, and understanding attachment wounds is a big piece of that. So there's 4 different attachment wounds. The first one's called anxious attachment. The second one is called avoidant. There's different names, by the way, in different psychological circles, but this is what we're calling them. So anxious, avoidant. Then there's a combination of the 2 of them, which is anxious avoidant. So it's both. And then the 4th would be secure attachment, which is the one that we strived for, right? I am a recovering anxious avoidant attachment. I don't mind sharing that with all of you. And in fact, my realization of that, which I don't know how long ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, somewhere in that range, was a really important time in my life, because I started to see that I could courageously take responsibility for a lot of the things that were happening around me in my life by doing this inner work, by taking responsibility for my actions, getting a lot more honest about why I was making them. So I have a group program. It's called Love Yourself Naked, and it combines emotional mastery work with like high-level intuitive nutrition for your unique body, and a lot of mindset, so that way somebody can live free and they can align with their purpose and they can share their voice in the world and put out what they need to put out into the world from a creative perspective, or even from a relationship perspective. And what happens in that program is a big look at the very beginning of our attachment wounds. And so I just want to give you kind of a bird's eye view of what that might look like. So somebody who is more of the anxious attached person may show up with a lot of anxiety. They're in a place of worry pretty much constantly. They are, worried about every single thing constantly by being preoccupied with their thoughts. So they're very unlikely to be present most of the time. They're trying to solve problems. They're trying to fix everything. And they're very anxious when it comes to intimate relationships. So the closer somebody gets, the more anxious they become. And they can very quickly go into low self-esteem, or be really hard on themselves, get down on themselves. They can be in a space of like self-berating and shaming. Then there is the avoidant. So this would be the second one. And avoidant is somebody who is going to disengage and doesn't want to get too close to people. So if a relationship gets close to them, they're going to want to back away. They're keeping people at arm's length, and they really fear losing their autonomy when they're too close to people. They really want independence, and the closer somebody gets to them, the more they fear that their independence will be taken away. They had parents likely who were really disengaged emotionally, so they didn't get that wiring. You can't learn from your parents what they didn't possess themselves. So I want to chat about the parents in a moment, because I think that's important to mention when it comes to our attachment wounds. And if you have any questions, by the way, I just really wanted to jump on and chat about this today, and I'm going to do more of these. But if you ever have questions or you have things to add, you can jot them in the comments. I'm not fully looking at them right now, but I'm happy to go back in later and chat with all of you. So the combination of anxious and avoidant together is a real it's tricky. And the reason why is because the very thing that we want more than anything else, the very thing we want more than anything else is simultaneously the thing we fear having more than anything else. So for example, there might be a woman or a man who has a goal to write a book, to be more expressed in the world, to put their information out there and to be seen and to use their voice to share. They have something they need to share and they've known it their whole lives. It's time. Yet their attachment wound, that is the avoidant attachment wound, is so deeply rooted in them that they simultaneously fear putting themselves out in that way because they could be rejected. The fear is being rejected, or the fear is being shut down and not liked, or losing everything. So why does this happen? Well, by the way, the fourth one is secure attachment, which I'll give some examples of in a little while. I want to explain why it happens because it's about our parents, and this is not to dog on our parents. Like, all of our parents did the best they knew how to do with the tools and knowledge that they had, and they learned it from their parents, who learned it from their parents, and so on and so forth. So we get to a certain age in our life where we start to learn about these attachment wounds. If this is your first time, or maybe you've been dabbling in this for a while, that's wonderful. Regardless, though, it's not something that we just like snap our fingers and say, okay, I get that and it's healed. To me, this kind of work is something that we do for the rest of our lives, right? We continue opening up to it. It's healing work, not healing in the sense that it's going to be healed, but it is a practice. And the practice is knowing the self, loving the physical self. So a lot of times when we're stuck in our attachment wounds, we are disassociated from ourselves and disassociated from our physical body. And we're operating from here up. A lot of mind thinking, a lot of addictive, anxious stuff, or a lot of avoidant, isolating stuff, but very much not connected here. And so what this allows us to do is to understand a little bit more about our lineage and to understand about how we were brought up and in our family structure, and then to see how those attachment wounds, so to speak, are showing up in our current life and keeping us from doing the very things that we are here to do, whether that be lose weight, whether that be write the book, whether that be in a fulfilling relationship that helps other people in the community, whether that be to live a dream and start the business you always wanted to, or to lead in a different kind of way. There's so many things that we have these dreams of, and we keep saying, one day, I'll put that on hold, or I'm not ready yet, or I just don't have all the information yet, right? We make excuses. And I'm here to tell you that, I don't think we have a lot of time to make excuses anymore. I think the world's changing and it needs us to change with it. And that also requires us to look more deeply and to get honest. This is step one, if there's a step here, to get honest with our relationship, the intimate relationship we have with ourselves, and where that started. So, a lot of times in anxious or avoidant, or somebody who is both anxious and avoidant, that's going to show up in a family where there is a parent who is very inconsistent with meeting the child's needs. So maybe one parent was narcissistic, or they were an addict, or they had mental health issues that weren't being dealt with. And maybe they completely ignored and disregarded that child, you. Maybe they just gave a little bit of attention whenever they could, but it wasn't much. And so it kind of kept you always wanting more. It creates a codependency and an unhealthy relationship with that parent, because it's they were not really there, but they just kind of gave you enough to keep you satisfied. And then that also might be for somebody, they could have a parent who was enabling the other parent so much. So maybe one parent was in a codependent relationship with a narcissistic parent, and they were giving so much attention to the addict or the narcissistic parent that the child, unfortunately, kind of gets left behind. They end up parenting themselves. They end up becoming more of an adult in their relationship dynamic with their parents than they should be. They lacked that childhood time. Another thing that may happen is there might be a parent who showed up and did all the things on the outside right? Like roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back, drove you to practice and all the things, but didn't have the capacity to emotionally connect. They didn't have the empathy, or they didn't know how to emotionally connect with you. And so, even though these parents are literally doing the only thing they knew how to do, right? The best they knew how to do, your unique soul needed something very specific that you did not get from your parents. No matter what your upbringing is, it's pretty inevitable that we're going to have something we didn't get that we needed in terms of a sense of security and safety. And so what a lot of this work is, when I work with clients in the Love Yourself Naked program, is about reparenting ourselves, learning how to connect with the self in a different kind of way. It's really around intimacy. And intimacy, if we want to describe what intimacy is, it's an honesty. So we are getting honest about our relationship with self. And we're connecting to this physical body and learning a little bit more about like what it's telling us. Our emotions are our teachers. I wrote about this in a post not too long ago. If you want to read it, I think it's called Emotional Mastery. And it really is describing that the emotions teach us, but we have been taught through a lot of these behaviors from our attachment wounds to numb out when things get too emotional, to distract, to isolate, and to go into high anxiety. So this, if we were to come up with a very simplistic, like 3-step, what do you do, right? To get started. Maybe you were somebody who already has massive awareness on this, and it's just a really good reminder for you. But the first one is to get super honest about where in your life you're finding yourself maybe stuck for a fear of being visible. Maybe you want to be, but you are not stepping into it because there's some other fear of people seeing you in a certain way. There might be, this was a big one for me that I'm going to share. And I remember where I was sitting when I got this. Like, it was a huge realization for me, and something I still work through, just so everyone's aware. Like, I'm working through this stuff all the time. Because I know that I won't grow and evolve as a human being unless I am super aware and working through it all the time. But the awareness was that it was a goal to be super autonomous. And my goal is to have a lot of independence and freedom, and to also be able to help a lot of people, to hold space for a lot of people. And while that is a goal simultaneously that kind of comes through me, I don't know that I chose that. It just feels like that's what's important to do. I have a fear on the other side of it, that avoidant side, that if I have too much contact with other people, or if I have too much responsibility, too much business grows too big, then the fear is that I will lose my freedom. I will lose my autonomy. I will lose my sense of independence. I won't be able to have, quote unquote, time for myself in the same way. So do you see how that's a conundrum for a lot of people? If I grow and do the very thing I want to do, I also have a simultaneous fear that that very growth that I want is also going to take away my freedom. And that is where we butt up against each other. And that's why people don't move off their couch. This sends them into what we call, freeze response for our nervous system. We don't know what to do. We don't have clarity, and we feel stuck. So if there's these 3 steps here, the first one is to get super honest. And that comes from creating maybe a dialogue with yourself. And I like to think about it as, how am I feeling right now? That's the question. And, notice how I put my hands on my body, like really checking in. How am I feeling right now? daily, as often as you can throughout the day, but at least once a day. Can that be your new honesty check-in with yourself? And it's an intimacy. When I say intimacy, again, is like a getting to know yourself. So maybe when you put your hand on your chest, you might notice that your heart's beating, or that there is something. And if you don't know, like maybe you're completely tuned out from your body, that's okay. Maybe you don't know the answer when you say, how am I feeling right now? That's okay. It doesn't matter right now. The goal is to keep asking the question and to kind of be okay in the limbo space of not knowing. The second thing would be to learn to hold more appropriate boundaries in your life. And this is something, again, I say this to my clients all the time. Boundaries is not work that we just like get and then we're like, okay, I've arrived. Like, we're going to be holding boundaries for the rest of our lives. And you do become better at it because you become more self-aware of what your needs are and what's healthy for you, what secure attachment looks like. Then you become better at holding boundaries, but it doesn't mean that you still don't need to hold them or that you don't keep learning, because the environment around you is going to change constantly. And so that learning of boundaries is really, as some people like to say, the highest form of self-care. And it gives you this really great opportunity to look at, where am I not taking care of myself, or where do I need to take better care of myself? Where am I not being my word in my life? So some of the ways that this shows up, and I wanted to just run through these really quickly, is so as somebody who's anxious and they're worried and they're high anxiety, they might be like obsessive compulsive cleaning constantly. They might be cleaning to the point of a fault, right? Like that they're so busy cleaning, doing, that they don't know how to sit down and just be. They don't know how to relax, to put their feet up, to take time for themselves. They might be worrying about other people regularly, so they're constantly preoccupied in their head, thinking about conversations, fantasizing about who they like, who they don't like, who likes them, who doesn't like them. They're very much in their head. That's the anxious attachment. And anytime there's intimacy in a relationship, and things get closer, then they feel even more all in their head, thinking. And then it goes down into low self-esteem. So when somebody even gets close to seeing some success, maybe with they've lost some weight, and I keep saying that because it's important to a lot of people, but it's not obviously important to everyone. Or maybe they feel like they've been consistent with their workout, or they have been showing up in a different kind of way of eating, and they just feel more energized. They might start, the anxious stuff kicks in, and it's like, but wait, am I doing this right? Is there something I'm missing? Am I not perfect enough? Right? Like, these are the things. So somebody who's avoidant and how this might relate, I'm not chatting too much today about relationships, but I just want to say, like on a side note, the only way to heal our attachment style is within relationship. It's the only way to, and I'm hesitant to say heal. So like, no, when I say heal, I mean practice healing your attachment style. It's not something that we heal and we're fine. It's a practice. But the only way to do that practice is to be in relationship. And it's really important for me to communicate to all of you today that you are in relationship with your body. Your physical body and you are literally a partner. You are in relationship to your business. If you have a business, you are in relationship with all of the people with whom you love in your life. You're in relationship with your money. You two have a relationship. Did you know that? You are in relationship with your food. You have a relationship to food. And the attachment style that you have shows up within all of those different things. So it's really powerful when you start doing this work, because you start noticing it and having a different dialogue with people. And you also start noticing that it's easier for you to work through things because you can see how it shows up. So let's just talk about the avoidant one. This would be, where I see a lot of people who have eating issues, food issues, they often say, and I can relate to this. This is where I used to be. So avoidant might be like not touching food for a while, and then like the anxious might come in later, and that would show up as binge eating. so it's like this back and forth roller coaster. The avoidant also might be somebody who goes for long periods of time. Sometimes people call it orthorexia nervosa, right? So they're like addicted to eating extremely healthy, and anything that is not on their limited menu is considered not good, right? And there would be shaming if they were to consume it, right? So this would be keeping things at arm's length. This is the detached, kind of avoidant. I don't want to get lost in you. And we might operate that way with our money. We might avoid looking at our bills. We might avoid looking at what's in our refrigerator. We might avoid looking at the pile of paperwork we haven't gone through that has checks that we might need to cash, right? We might avoid looking at our phone messages for long periods of time. And again, I'm not saying I haven't done all of these things myself, because that whole reason I'm able to speak to you about this today is because I've been there. And so I want you to start to see that part of the goal here is, one, to get honest about it. Secondly, would be to work through the boundaries. And then part of those boundaries is learning to ground yourself. So this is where part of the action plan comes in, of where we do the work. And, it's really powerful to know that you can move your body and start to move your mind around some of these things. It's very powerful to know that you can put your feet on the ground. I'm actually at a standing desk now. That's very helpful for me when I work, because I can be like a lot more grounded. The other thing that you can do is you can breathe. And like I said, you can put your hands on your body and check in and say, how are you? Like, what do you need right now? How are you feeling? Like, you don't have to say it out loud if people hear you, like you can just talk to yourself, but that check-in is part of the boundaries. Self-care is a boundary. And then the third is a really big idea, and this is really what I teach inside the Love Yourself Naked online coaching group and salon. And it is very powerful, and that's called emotional mastery. It's learning how to emotionally regulate, so that no matter what comes in, whether it be a new relationship, whether it be a business that we start, whether it be a different way of being in our body, like if we want to lose weight, or if we want to be an athlete and we're not currently, like, we need to actually learn how to hold that in our nervous system. A lot of people think that losing weight or changing their body to step into more of an athletic way of being, or being in a relationship with somebody, a lot of people think that it's just like a cookie cutter list of like, tell me what foods to eat, tell me what recipes to make, I'm on it, right? That strategy is really important, and I'm not disregarding it, because it's actually really important. But what's also simultaneously important is that we learn how to emotionally regulate. You need to be able to hold the capacity in your body to live in it differently. You need to be able to hold the capacity in your nervous system to have a new identity around relationship. You need to have a different way of being in your nervous system in order for you to show up differently with money and being seen and visible in a career. Like, it's all tied to each other. And I hope I was able to articulate this for all of you today. Again, this was kind of inspired from some conversations this week that I've had with so many different people about, doing work in this capacity through Love Yourself Naked. But it's also things that I'm talking about with business owners who are wanting to make 7 figures in their business. It's also something I'm talking about with people who are, working through childhood trauma. Like, it's a thing that we all share. And I hope this inspired some kind of conversation or question or an awareness for you to get a little bit more honest with that relationship with yourself, and learn about what intimacy with yourself, your physical self, really looks like. All right, if you have any questions for me, you can jot them below. If you want to schedule a transformational breakthrough session with me to talk about Love Yourself Naked, you can send me a message and I can hook you up with the link to apply. I hope you're all well.